Welcome to Teachers Talk Radio. Thank you for listening.
Thanks for downloading this episode from Teachers Talk Radio. You can find the full schedule and listen back to all our shows at ttradio.org. Enjoy the podcast.
Good evening, educators, and welcome to the Twilight Show here on Teachers Talk Radio. I've got two great guests for you this evening, guys. I'm very happy to be joined by two very knowledgeable practitioners. I've got my regular guest, Yannick, and I've got new to my show, I've got Zoe Enser. Good evening, both of you. Hope you're both good.
Evening, we're very well, thank you.
How are you, Yannick? All good?
Yeah, very good.
Yeah, I hope you've had a good day. It's been a bit of a long day for me today. It's that sort of time of the where January feels like it's never going to end. So we're pushing through. So we've got for you this evening some interesting and potentially kind of, well, we don't want to say controversial topics, but there's a couple of topics and things that I've seen around that piqued my interest in terms of what's going on, what's topical out there. I probably spend a little bit too much time on social media, which is ironic, seeing as one of the things that we'll get into tonight is this social media ban for under 16s. Now, what's interesting about that for me is, I don't know, I think you two are aware of this, is I got hacked on my X account, which meant that I think it was Christmas Day or Christmas Eve. I can't remember. It was actually around Christmas where I must have clicked on that link. We had this link. And by the way, if any of you out there get this message saying, please, I need these extra votes for something. I don't even know what it was, but liking it, I didn't even think I'd clicked on it, but I must have done, I think, because it came from somebody who I thought was someone I knew, but obviously it was someone who had been hacked. What a silly thing to do. But anyway, because I was hacked, I didn't have access to my X account for a couple of weeks. And in fact, I think I'm going to lose my X account. And what was interesting is somebody I heard coined the other day something called FOMO. I don't know if it's FOMO.
FOMO.
Have you heard of that, Zoe? Do you know what it stands for?
Indeed. Yeah. It's about I can't even think what it's called. We know what we mean when we talk about FOMO.
Yeah, fear of missing out, apparently.
I'd
not heard this before, but I really felt like I was missing out. So one of the things that I think some people are saying is young people are so tied to their accounts, their social media accounts. So I don't know. It's something I'm going to ask both of you. I know that you've got to disappear in about half an hour, Zoe, so I'm really pleased to have you on. And Yannick, obviously, also for coming on once again. I just thought it'd be interesting just to see what our opinions are on some of these things. So we're going to get into this debate about mobile phones. The government obviously are going to try and exert some influence. They haven't made a decision yet, have they? I don't know if you know anything about other countries. Yannick, I heard France were quite likely to do it. I don't know if that's the case. I think Austria have put some kind of ban in place. I don't know if it's on the social media or whatever, but certainly we know Australia is the model that the UK might follow. This show, by the way, everyone, is sponsored by Hachette Learning, okay? So they are publishers of professional development books and resources that support great teaching and learning in schools around the world. So if you'd like to level up your professional development today, visit www.hachetteLearning.com to explore the full range of titles. So those are the excellent sponsors of our show, guys. So do have a look if you're interested in some reading and some CPD. So we're going to start then thinking about this. Ofsted is a very topical thing at the moment, and we're very lucky that we've got Zoe on. Zoe has quite considerable experience in this area as a former HMI. So between, obviously, we're going to see what our opinions are, what our feelings are. I've not been involved in an inspection under the new framework. Have you, Yannick? I don't think you have you? Because I know that you had one a similar time to my school had an Ofsted a couple of years ago.
Yeah.
So it would be we're in the window because we are let's say we're an improving school. We are improving, so we are expecting Ofsted, which will be under the new framework, of course. We don't know exactly when, but it could be soon. So yeah, so we're expecting it. It'll be interesting to see what the difference is. So yeah, so let's just start with that. So obviously, Zoe, we as teachers are quite interested. You obviously have a more contextual view than we do. How do you feel that the new framework is looking? So do you feel like things are improving, and how do you feel like it's going down with schools at the moment?
Well, firstly, I have got a school that's in the window. They're kind of due, and so we have that Monday morning of seeing whether the call comes in. So we've still got that element, which I know was a big factor for heads. At least it's Monday as opposed to thinking Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. So there's a bit more consistency there. What I'm hearing from people in the sector is that it is much more relational. It does feel more like a conversation and a collaboration. Personally, whenever I was on inspection, I did work very hard to make it collaborative and a conversation with leaders to really understand the context of everything that was going on within that school when I was talking to them. But it's certainly the message that I'm hearing. Some people who've experienced the new framework hadn't been inspected for a while. Some of those were the kind of schools that volunteered, put themselves forward because they wanted to have a little bit more control of when that happened, if they could, and that's understandable as well. And their experiences again, and if you look at the reports that have just started to come out over the last few weeks, you'll see a lot of those are landing in that kind of strong area or exceptional area. So these were schools that were obviously feeling very, very confident. I think we'll get more of a spread of a sample of what other schools are experiencing in that situation as we go forward, and that will be interesting to watch. I think there are a few areas where I'm not convinced by. So, for example, the continuing to combine attendance and behaviour. I think that we have a lot more kind of sway when it comes to dealing with behaviour in our school than perhaps all of the time with attendance, because that is not just an individual school picture, it's a national picture and it's also an international picture. And we've seen that real decline in school attendance, and that can be really tricky to then be saying you are going to have that kind of judgment sat there around attendance, but actually we recognise you couldn't have necessarily done anything more with that. And if it was teased out, you'd be able to really see that. Whereas being subsumed with behaviour, I think that makes it trickier. So that was kind of the area. There was some discussion earlier about in the kind of first iterations that they were going to separate out teaching and curriculum, and I was quite vocal that I thought that would be a mistake. And actually, they've got those together, so that seems to be a positive. But I do. It's always the proof of the pudding's in the eating. It's always going to what is the experience of the schools?
Yeah.
What is validity of what's happening? And we know that there can be issues with validity.
Yeah, I like I am sort of relieved to hear about context being quite a central thing. Our school has all schools have a context, don't they? We know that. But in terms of what Bridget Phillipson has said in the past about white British students, we live in an area that's not that culturally. So, sorry, I teach in an area that's not very culturally diverse. And I think sometimes that's an implication. We're also coastal where I teach. I wouldn't say we're out in the middle of nowhere because we're not really as such, but recruitment still is an issue. So all of those factors, which I'm sure you're aware, Zoe, are contributing to that. And if Ofsted are starting to listen a bit more to that, then I think people will rest a little bit easier. What do you think, Yannick? Do you feel, in terms of your experience, I know that we've not seen the new framework yet, but do you feel like Ofsted are sensitive to context?
Well, it's the idea. I mean, the problem with Ofsted is that, I like what you said. It is a conversation at the end of the day, but following that conversation, you know that you're going to have a report that's being published, and quite rightly, people are scared of that. and they want to tick all the boxes to make sure that report is good. That's not how it works, because then you end up doing things for Ofsted, and that's not what it should ever be like. The last school I was in, which got RI, was totally justified. You know what I mean? And then if your school is good, then it's good. But the problem is when you start, because there's so much linked to that report. It's being published, and of course, we want to pass that exam. Any kind of school want to pass that exam, because you know that if you're in RI or any kind of those categories, then it's hard work. It's incredibly hard work. Nobody wants to be that, but that's the issue, isn't it? So I'm not sure how the new framework changes anything to that, because there's still the stigma of Ofsted is coming, and I see it. I see it all the time. Oh, pray for us. We've had the call, and
Yeah,
And
I
I
mean,
think those, yeah, I was going to
Sorry,
say, I think those past experiences really do matter. And I think, the sector have had those kind of negative experiences. And we were talking just before we went on air about, the work that needs to be done with communities, but also, what does it mean to get a requires attention? Is that the same? It's not the same as RI. There is obviously an attempt in Ofsted to bring in more nuance, but then if you are a school there with particular achievement rather than attainment, if you're a school that's achievement isn't typically in line with national averages, which some of those schools, which we've been talking about there, where they've got particular context, may not be, having that area highlighted to your community as being what seems to be a concern, that can be quite a big thing. So I think there's a lot of recalibration that's needed if we are going to be embracing this more nuanced approach, which it looks like we're having to. And that means work both with the teachers and understanding it might be okay to be in a school with a requires attention in one area, and the same for parents and carers to understand what that means. And it doesn't mean that this school, it probably means the school is typical, and Ofsted have kind of put out this information that we will be expecting perhaps more schools to have a bit of a mixed profile. It's not just simply, obviously we lost the kind of one word judgment anyway. It's not just simply this is a good school, this is an RI school. It's actually a typical school which has got strengths in some areas and some other areas which they're working on. So, I can see the theory of having this much more nuanced picture. But again, how does that land on the ground? What does it mean for the people in those schools? What does it mean for those families looking at the reports?
That's it, isn't it? It's exactly that. What does it mean for the people at the end of the day? It's just for me, the big issue is that how it's published and kind of used as a tool to advertise a school. That to me is completely wrong. On the one hand, I think monitoring is great, and everybody should welcome that. Just like as teachers, we welcome being observed. To improve. It's ultimately that big banner that people use, as we're outstanding, we're good, or well, we are. I sorry, so nothing.
It's a tricky one, isn't it? I think reputation, what goes out in the press. I mean, I get frustrated when I see in my local press where I am, it will say something like schools ranked from best to worst. The 5 worst schools in Essex where I work, 5 worst schools in Essex revealed. And you're like, what's that really doing for anybody? So, because people buy into that, people use that, and that reputation sticks. And
Well, I'm a big fan of a property program. I can guarantee I'll tune in to Love It or List It, and there'll be Kirsty and Phil talking about, this has got a outstanding, or especially if I look at the reruns, this has got an outstanding school just around the corner, or 2 outstanding schools just around the corner, and I know that we can be quite cynical about that, but actually, it is something that people look at. You can still see it. You go on Rightmove, and it will list those kind of details.
And it makes you wonder that people will still, even though we're not grading anymore, how long before people forget that the grades once existed? It's kind of, it's something that sticks. And, picking up on what Yannick said earlier, it's that dread, isn't it? That Monday dread. I just tried to sort of think about what that must be like, for my head teacher every single Monday. But I mean, the fact that it is just Monday, I wasn't even aware of that, Zoe. Someone said that to me recently. So once Monday's out the way,
Yeah.
Yeah. But we shouldn't be feeling like that, should we?
No.
But, I absolutely get why people do feel like that. And as I say, I've got a school in the window, and I was having a conversation, and it was like, right, okay, so we'll text you when that comes in. And so, and I'm finding myself, I'm going, all right, it's Monday morning. We're past then. It's okay. There's not going to be a call in this week, so I don't have to reschedule everything.
What is so scary? I mean, we've gone a long way from when I started teaching. It was 6 weeks before Ofsted came, and there was 6 weeks of absolute hell. That's much better now. At least that,
Yeah, that's true. Yeah.
I was in exactly the same position. I was like 6 weeks in, the same as you, and I was like, "Where's all my support gone? Everyone's disappeared. Everyone's gone crazy."
Absolutely.
So things are. I mean, it takes time for things to move forward, to get better. It'll never be perfect because some people will always be against Ofsted. But I think it's strangely enough, it's always the people who don't get the outcome they want. Eh?
Exactly. Tom's put a comment on. I'm going to put Tom's comment up.
Yeah.
So he's talking about Ofsted and the fact that it drives the media reporting. So I suppose what he's saying is we're talking about the media reporting. He's still saying that because the system is still high stakes, that's always going to be there, I suppose. Ofsted drives all this. The media
I would agree. That point you made there, high stakes drives this, and we can, and I can remember kind of in my pre-Ofsted days being really, really cross about something that I thought Ofsted had done. And actually, when I dug into it, it was the DFE wanted it. And so when it comes to things like high stakes, and I know there's been a lot of back and forth about whether Ofsted themselves can lower the stakes. But actually, while the DFE still need that information and need that data and want to see how schools might need support, obviously we've got RISE teams now. They need to be deployed in a particular direction by the DFE. And so I think, by the system existing as it is, yes, it continues to be high stakes, and therefore it does potentially continue to drive that. But I think lots of different parts of that have a part to play. And I think while the DFE still needs that information and wants that information to be made public as well, coming back to that point of being a report, having that at the end, having your name or your school attached to that report, that does make it more high stakes. But I think there's a whole big system issue there, not necessarily Ofsted saying, well, this is going to be fantastic. We're going to continue to drive those high stakes. It's part of a machine, I guess, which is a bit depressing, but that's kind of how the whole government process works.
This show is brought to you in partnership with Hachette Learning, publishers of professional development books and resources that support great teaching and learning in schools around the world. Level up your professional development today and visit hachetlearning.com to explore the full range of titles.
Hey teachers, it's Tom here from Teachers Talk Radio, just dropping in to tell you about Teachers Talk Connect 2026. We are back with our amazing big annual CPD and networking extravaganza in Manchester. It's on Saturday the 14th of March and tickets are completely free for teachers. Just head over to ttradio.org/Connect 2026 to grab your ticket today. We can't wait to see you there.
Do you ever see that changing? Because at the moment, it has felt like a them and us in the past. If what you're saying it is more now, it is more people working together with Ofsted. Can you ever see a time when Ofsted are just, I don't know, permanently deployed into trusts or something like that? It doesn't. Do you ever feel like there's going to be a substantial change? I think some people might say that when Ofsted did the big listen, I don't know what people were expecting, but I mean, I don't know. Maybe they feel like it's become more complex than it was before because of all the different areas and on the report cards. But can you ever see a time when we get extensive changes to how we hold schools accountable?
I think it's a really tricky one, isn't it? Because if we are saying that we need that accountability measure for public funds, then that is always going to therefore mean that there's got to be some kind of independence or relative independence. If, as you say, deploying inspectors within trusts, then are we marking our own homework? How does that kind of independent accountability work? Whether we need a completely different, not Ofsted accountability, that's a question to ask. And that's a question that it would be kind of a governmental decision around what that should be, and if that is the case. There's a lot of schools in England. There's a lot of areas to look at, and we've got slightly different systems over in Wales and over and up in Scotland as well, and internationally there are different approaches. So it's really, what is it that I guess the government wants from it, and they will say parents want it. I'm never entirely convinced by that argument, but what is it that government wants from this system of kind of accountability and measurement, and that will make the difference with that relationship, I think.
Yeah, certainly moving away from one word judgments. It definitely was the way that we had to go, because people weren't looking beyond the one word judgments. You could make the argument, of course, that we can compare schools more, I don't know, in a bit more detail in terms of if my student is a particular student who may not be a high flyer but needs particular SEND support, is there a school that does well in terms of its inclusive teaching? I don't know. So it might be something that's a better tool for parents. Like you say, we don't know. The government will say that it is, but that we know that the government will say something, and then they'll say something else, and then another government will come in and they'll say something completely different.
And that's the problem with education in this country, always having been quite a political football. And, you end up being pushed from pillar to post, trying to appease different things. And actually a big conversation about what's education about, what's effective education, that kind of is cross-party. And I know the select committee do some work on that, but they're not really driving forward legislation and policy. So, but I know other countries where they've taken that approach, have been quite successful in the past. Perhaps those successes haven't sustained in the same way. But thinking you are moving towards whatever the flavour of the month is, depending on who's in government, isn't a comfortable position for schools to be in.
No, absolutely not. I wanted to ask you, I did mention about Ofsted in maths, and obviously to some extent we do have Ofsted consultants, and that was one of the things I wanted to ask you both about. And I'll start with you, Yannick. What are your feelings? My feelings sometimes with Ofsted consultants, I mean, I've worked with different consultants have worked with me. Obviously, my experiences tend to lead, like anyone, my opinion. They haven't always been the best. I'm going back a long time when, somebody who was meant to be supporting me did everything but it goes back quite a long way. I also know that there's some excellent ex-Ofsted people out there doing brilliant work in terms of consultancy. And I'm certainly not wanting to have a go at anyone. But my feeling is more about Ofsted, but specific Ofsted consultants working in maths or working in schools to advise schools. Is that really do you feel that's the right way what do you feel about that, Yannick? Do you think that that's fair, level playing field?
It's been an incredibly long time that I've had to attend a training provided by my school with an ex-Ofsted inspector or a consultant. So a lot of schools don't tend to do that anymore. I mean, there's always been people in maths that employ people to improve standards. Now, you've always got to think, what kind of people are these? Usually young, ambitious people who will actually improve results, but at what cost? And they will move up very quickly as well. I'm in two minds about this. You can do a lot of things on the, pretending that you improve standards. It's improving standards very easy, two easy words to make people do anything to change, move things. I mean, and when it does work, because there's always measures to improve standards. There's loads of ways to do this, and I don't know. I mean, the only experience I've got of ex-Ofsted people is when we've had reviews of subject reviews, always led by people like that. usually on the request of the head, just as an excuse to make people redundant or to tell you that your subject was rubbish and you needed to change things. That's never been positive for me. There was no dialogue in there. People can observe, say, yeah, you're rubbish. And my experience and my colleagues' experience certainly has been exactly the same. It's never been, there was always an agenda to monitor a subject that maybe wasn't performing as well as others. Yeah, there were issues, but that was an easy way to say, all right, come in, pay you a couple of grand, tell you everything's rubbish, and then a couple of people will move and you start again. Yeah. Maths.
It doesn't help when it feels like there's a agenda from the word go, because obviously that skews people's opinion before they've even walked through the door.
But why would you employ someone if there's no agenda as well? Why would you ask someone to come in if things go well? That's the issue as well. There's always an agenda. There's always a reason for someone to come in.
I get a feeling, and you can maybe correct me on this in a minute, Zoe, that Ofsted generally don't want, or I might think, I'm probably thinking Ofsted, but certainly the unions' guidance as well, is to not be involved in mocksteads, right, or similar. I mean, I don't know, but then Mats still do reviews. They are still using maybe ex-Ofsted inspectors or HMIs as a role in their mat. What's your feeling on that, Zoe, in terms of using those consultants?
Well, for a start, Ofsted were always very, very clear that they didn't advise mocksteads, because this attempt to kind of replicate the experience, and even doing a subject review should be quite different. It might have some of the same activities, but it should be quite different to what the experience of an Ofsted inspection is, because under the old framework, what you were doing there was you were using those subjects to sample the quality of education. So you weren't going in and inspecting English. You were going in, and English was one lens through which you considered what the quality of education was more broadly. It sounds all very depressing from Yannick's point of view, and it makes me really sad. And I would be lying to say that I hadn't seen some of those kind of same approaches being used over the years. But, I'm seeing that kind of less and less. I'm kind of on both sides as well, because obviously I'm a school improvement lead for a trust, and I go in and I work with people. And I think that's the key. I work with people to look at the areas that we're going to, not for Ofsted, but the areas we want to improve for those young people. So today a lot of my day was involved looking at careers and exploring the careers provision and what that meant for pupils within that community who are disadvantaged, and pupils with SEND, and what that provision looked like for all of those pupils. So, I wouldn't work in school improvement if it was a case of you're kind of coming in and you're doing that. And I know I've had pre-Ofsted people that approached me and said, can you come and do this mockstead with me? And I was always really clear at that point, I haven't had Ofsted training. So even if I go in, I can come and support a subject review or an area review. But what I can't do is replicate an Ofsted experience, and nor do I want to. I don't think that's going to be helpful. We might have a coaching conversation around the things that you might talk about, and that's something that I would do now. But when I wasn't Ofsted trained, I was always very, very clear about that. In terms of consultants coming in, obviously, if you are somebody who's working with Ofsted as an OI, you shouldn't be then sharing that kind of, this is something that Ofsted have shared with me. But things have shifted quite a lot because there's this increased transparency. They've put out all of their training that's given to inspectors. Now, that's not the same as sitting there together and discussing it. It's a video of what that training looks like, and it's the same messages, an attempt to kind of level that playing field to increase that transparency, and everyone can use that in order to have a look at it. Going in and giving advice on something, though, if you are an ex-inspector on a framework you haven't experienced, working with a team who might not be Ofsted trained, or trying to advise on something you haven't perhaps seen on either side of inspection, I think is not useful. I'll be quite blunt. I think it probably helps embed myths which we don't need. If people are worried about something, they will latch onto things. And there's something at the moment there's a lot of that on the internet around handwriting. And I can see already some myths coming out around what Ofsted might be looking at for handwriting and what this might mean for our context. And this is that kind of problem that's there. And, I've heard stories of somebody who's gone in, who's been Ofsted trained or has been an ex-inspector. And I've heard some of the things that the school's been told, and it's taken them off in a completely the wrong direction. And they've not been happy with it. And I've not been happy with it. And then we've had to unpick and work back and think about why. So I think we have to be really careful, and leaders will make decisions about who they want to bring in. And I hope that they're not kind of bringing them in with an agenda to get people out and that kind of thing that you were talking about there, Yannick. But leaders obviously will make the decision. But any kind of consultancy, whether it's Ofsted style consultancy or whether it's something for subject or something for kind of teaching and learning, you've got to really be sure of quality. And I worry a little bit about some of that quality when it comes to Ofsted style consultancy.
Yeah, I've certainly had experience of people coming in and making judgments based on what doesn't seem like a great deal of evidence, and then a narrative being created, which then the school invests a lot of time and energy and mental health stresses on those staff. And yeah, like you say, that's something that I do think, if it's someone who, I don't know, who taught, if you've got an ex-Ofsted inspector, it could be someone who hasn't taught for 20 years, hasn't taught post-COVID. It's a completely different landscape to what it used to be. They may not be, if they work in a trust, there may be several schools in the trust that have completely different contexts that they may not fully appreciate. I don't know. But
And what does ex-Ofsted mean? Because that could mean actually you were inspecting under 3 frameworks ago. So you had some experience of being, an inspector or HMI, but that was 10 years ago. And since then, education's moved on and the frameworks have moved on and Ofsted thinking has moved on. And so actually, is this the quality that you want? And so I think it's always just got to be that caution about, who are we using? But I'd say that about any kind of consultancy, really.
What I never understand is the lack of confidence of leaders to make decisions for their own school and their own students. I mean, I'm not a school leader, obviously. I'm a leader of a department, but I make my own decisions for my department because that's what I want to see. I see a lot of things. I pick what I like. I pick what I want to do, but I don't understand the need to reassure myself by bringing people in and necessarily following what they are saying. You know what I mean? Sometimes, as you said, what advice, what kind of people say to you, and then you say, all right, they've said this, so we need to do that. Well,
I don't know whether
aren't you the leader for your school to decide? I mean, a leader in a school should know the teach. They should be around seeing what's going on, make decision based on what they see, not what they hear from someone who comes in school. You think, wow, I'm always surprised that SLT you never see, and then they get some people to advise them, but they should know what's going on the ground.
I wonder whether, Yannick, that comes from top-down pressure on the head teacher, because we've moved away from a head teacher always being at the top of the establishment, haven't we? Often that head teacher, they're under pressure from Ofsted, but I get the feeling head teachers can be put under considerable pressure by their trust as well, and pressure to move in a particular direction. I don't know. So I don't know whether that's why. And I've known very strong head teachers who I think are superb, being quite highly influenced by people above them. And you're right, the head teacher is in the best position to know their context, aren't they? So I don't know. That is an interesting one. So why do they need that second? Why do they need that second opinion?
I would say this. I think there's something quite healthy about getting that kind of opinion that comes from someone who's stepped back from that. That doesn't mean they don't know the context or want to understand the context. But again, it's that difference between being done to and done with, and working with a leader who's got a lot of noise, might be getting information that's coming from one side of the trust, might be getting information because they've seen what's happening on the news, or they've gone on social media and there's everyone talking there. They've got all the information that they've got in front of them about their school, and actually sitting down, having a conversation with someone who maybe is a little stepped back from it, can help cut through some of that noise. Not every leader would need that. Great SLT will do that together with each other, but then you've of course got, within an SLT, you might have people of different experiences. You've then got the small schools to consider as well, and having someone come in who will support them through those conversations, because actually what they've got is only 2 people on leadership and 3 teachers in the school, including them. That might be quite a healthy thing for them to do. So I think it's, they're a tool, and it's how you use that tool, and it's what you do. I always say when I'll send in kind of a bit of a report when I've visited a school, if I'm looking at a key area, it's always up to the head what they do with that information. It's always up to, or the head of department, if I'm feeding back to them, it's up to them what they do with it. I can work with them to help them to do what they want to do with it as well, but it's not my school. So although it's my trust and I'm working, the school is the trust and the trust is the school, and we work very closely, it's not my remit to do that, to say, right, that head teacher, you've got to do this, because they need to filter it.
I'm glad you've said that. I just get a feeling some trusts aren't doing it like that, Zoe. I don't know. I can't.
We're a lovely trust. Anyone who's looking for a role in a trust, we are amazing. And I mean that genuinely. I looked really sarky there, but we are.
And I was trying to find out where you're based, which is, I think you're up north, aren't you, Zoe?
I am. I'm in the northwest, and a lot of our schools are based kind of Blackburn, Burnley, but we go out towards Manchester and Wigan area as well.
Oh, fab. Before we move on, I just want to mention again to everyone listening our sponsors, who are Hachette Learning. And this show is brought to you in partnership with them. Hachette Learning, the publishers of professional development books and resources that support great teaching and learning in schools around the world. So if you'd like to level up even your professional development, you can do so by visiting www.hachetlearning.com and having a look at their books and their titles on there. I also want to mention, guys, TTR Connect, if I can get it up on my screen again and say this properly. Teachers Talk Connect 2026 is coming up fairly soon. I think in about 6 or 7 weeks. I just said 6, 7 for anyone out there who knows about that. We'll do the thing. So 6 or 7 weeks. Teachers Talk Connect is back, which is our annual CPD and networking extravaganza. Join the TTR team on Saturday, the 14th of March in Manchester. Tickets are free. What are you waiting for? Head over to ttradio.org/connect 2026. So that is a free event that you can get in. All educators can get involved with, and it'd be great to see some people there. And I'm hoping to make my way, which is sort of not far from your neck of the woods, really, Zoe, by the sound of it.
No.
So yeah, I've never been. To be honest, I've never been to Manchester or Liverpool. It's a part of the country I've never been.
Yeah,
So
absolutely. Liverpool in particular, very close to my heart. Love it.
I was trying to convince my other half that she might like a day out there, which would give me an excuse to spend that weekend there. But yeah, I'm working on that. But yeah, so we've said quite a bit about Ofsted. I know you need to get going, Zoe. I'm not trying to get rid of you in any way, shape or form, but do let me know when you need to disappear.
Now seems like a perfect break. It's been an absolute pleasure talking to you. So
thanks so much for coming on.
Great.
All right, Zoe. Bye. Have a good evening.
Bye.
See you later. Oh, lovely. Right. It was really interesting talking to Zoe there, getting a bit of insight. So it's Yannick and myself for the rest of it. Now, the other big one, the other big juicy one is this social media ban, isn't it? I was just wondering, I don't really know where, I'm not in one camp or the other really yet. I don't know. I'm just going to say, I'll give you some time to think what you're going to say about that, Yannick, because what I've seen online is that 2 opposing views. First of all, there was an article I saw in TES by a teacher, secondary teacher, Simon Lightman, his name is, and he's made some points about the social media ban not being a good thing. He said You'd still have to deal with social media issues even if it were banned, so it wouldn't completely get rid of the issues. It may create the appearance of safety while ignoring deeper problems. He also thinks that schools should have a role in risk management and teaching children about, online risks and,
As if we
you know,
didn't do that.
yeah, as if we don't do that
Every year
already.
from year 7 to year 11. Actually, I'm still doing it in a year 12 tutorial. So
Exactly that.
it's not, I mean, what are we saying here is that, yeah, it's okay. So there is that. So, let's not do it because it's not going to get rid of the problems. No, it's not, but it's a start, isn't it? That's what we're talking about. It's a start.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's, of course, it's not going to be perfect, and it's not, you can say that with absolutely everything. Oh, let's not do it because it's not going to get rid of the problem. Anything.
So which way are you leaning on it, would you say, Yannick? Are you leaning towards the ban?
Like you, it's hard. We work in schools, so of course, when you work in schools, you're a lot more measured, aren't you? Yeah, we don't have a view from outside. We've got a view from inside. Gut feeling is, yeah, absolutely, yeah. Let's do it. I think because you can see it as a parent, as a teacher. Phones are nothing but a distraction. I say that, and then we use phones in lessons sometimes to do some bouquet at the end of the lesson. So that's great. And of course, if they don't have that, I can't do that, which is a very nice, easy activity for me to end up a lesson with. So it's not all negative, but saying that a bouquet is only a game, so there's not necessarily, people will say there's not necessarily any, educational value in there. Although I can argue that, we actually seeing all the words in a fun context. So it's not wasted time either.
I don't think it is. I mean, I do like a Blooket quiz. I use the school laptops. I book them, last 10 or 15, usually 15 minutes by the time they're fired up. I used to work at a school where there was a set of iPads and they were excellent. You could just turn them on and you'd be off. There'd be no dead time. At the moment, the issue is getting them logged on and issues like that signed in. But yeah, I like a Blooket. The kids like a Blooket. It's a bit different. Sometimes they'll say, "Sir, can we do one that's not about science?" And I'm like, "No, it's a science lesson." Yeah.
Yeah. Sorry, guys.
Yeah, so no, I'm not. I'm already taking a risk here. If someone comes in and sees me playing on the computer,
If
I'm
Ofsted
already.
was in this lesson.
Yeah, if Ofsted come in, yeah, I've already stuck my neck out for you, kid. Meet me in the middle. But yeah, so it can cut both ways. Yeah, it's the fact that it looks like it's something, from what I hear, that's gonna be more widespread. It's already happened in Australia. Presumably, they've looked at statistics. I've not really drilled down much into that and how it's gone in Australia.
Put it like this: when there was a ban on smoking, did that stop people from smoking? No, but it was a much better life after that. Same thing, exactly the same thing to me. Like from one day to the next, people couldn't smoke in restaurants, in nightclubs. People could still smoke, but so social media is the same thing. I think it just makes things easier, maybe, to manage and to keep in check. I mean, you're right that I mean, we need to deal with the issue of social media for young people, is the fact that they get into all sorts of bullying and harassment and mental health. So yeah, we need to tackle that as well, and we are. I think the schools are tackling all these issues in PSHE or whatever you call it, about mental health, risks of. I mean, I think a phone doesn't have its place in a school. That would make things easier on a lot of levels. And
Yeah, definitely. I mean, we know that there can be some positives. I've got some things here. I'd looked a little bit and used some AI just to sort of summarise some things. But they're saying it's UK doctors report growing evidence of harm. What's it saying? It's anxiety, depression, poor sleep, high rates of cyberbullying. Exposure to harmful content, bullying, inappropriate material. So yeah, even limiting development, they're saying, potentially. So when you actually read the list of the reasons for doing it, there are some more compelling arguments there, I would say. The only thing that did surprise me, because we have this thing at the moment in our school, which is really good. It's called Votes for Schools. I don't know if you've heard of it, but there's a topical there's a sort of a topical question that the students have to think about, like, does global politics affect me? Which, that was the first one, which for a kid, I'm trying to think, when I was a kid, I probably would have thought, what? That's nothing to do with me. But then obviously this one has been about the social media ban. But something that came up out of that interested me was the NSPCC, ChildNet, and the Molly Rose Foundation say social media ban would be wrong. Social media ban for under 16s would be wrong because it creates a false sense of safety. So we've got that argument again. Drives children into more dangerous spaces, removes support networks, lets tech companies avoid responsibility, fails to. I mean, I don't think that's a strong argument because tech companies are going to try and avoid some responsibility, aren't they? Because they want those clicks and they want that. It says fails to fix harmful algorithms and design choices, creates a risky cliff edge. Some are saying when they get to 16, there's going to be this cliff edge where they've not been allowed social media, and then suddenly everybody at a certain age, at that age of 16, they can suddenly start accessing that social media. I mean, for me personally, I am leaning towards, because as teachers, well-being has got to be central. Child protection has got to trump everything, hasn't it? And I think there are some arguments. I mean, I saw somebody on Twitter had put some comments on, and I don't know this person, but I think they were a teacher or a head teacher, so someone who knows schools. But they said that their child was extremely anxious to the point that they felt that they needed that at some point in the day, that phone, just for that little bit of reassurance from their mum or dad or whatever. And it made me think, well, maybe there will need to be dispensation.
Yes.
In some extreme cases. And
that's an extreme case, isn't it? I mean, having to ring your parents during the day when you're at school. So that's not, again, that's not necessarily usual, is it? It's very unusual.
It is unusual, and obviously, the other thing is, if you're doing that, you could have a brick, couldn't you? You could have what we call a brick, an old phone where that doesn't have all of the apps on it, but you've still got that contact. So there are ways around it. If for parents who are going to say it's a safety thing,
I mean, you've always got to be careful not make an exception, like a reason for not having something. Because people are very, very good at doing that. Oh no, it doesn't work because my son, blah 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 blah.
Yeah.
Well, okay. Well, I don't like the ban on smoking because I smoke. So my son smokes. So that's not good for him because he needs to smoke.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm exaggerating there, obviously, but we always make exceptions depending on our own situation, which is not the way things work. There's a law, and then quite rightly, we should be able to make exceptions and change things depending on people's situation. But I think we are very good at that, schools as well. I think we are. Think as a teacher, the exceptions you make. Someone's got a card, a timeout card. Someone's got a toilet pass. Someone's got. We know our students. We've got rules that they can be quite strict, but we've also got loads of ways that, be careful about him because this and him. And before I've got classes where I've got 10 students who don't follow the rules because this and that's great. And I'm aware of that, and that's fine. It's no toilet in my lessons. However, people have got passes. People have, of course, that's fine. You can't do anything in my classroom, but I know you've got an issue with that. I'm careful, I'm aware, but I need to have a blanket rule for everybody because if not, everybody does whatever they want, and...
Yeah, it's difficult. I do think schools, from my experience, schools try extremely hard to know the students, to understand their needs, to cater for their needs, be inclusive. I do think we try very, very hard. I do think, sometimes we maybe need to listen a bit better to parents, but it needs to be a partnership where people are listening to each other and working together for the best interests of students. So I get what you're saying there, but I mean, my understanding is in Australia the ban doesn't cover WhatsApp, for example. so you can still have contact with people without social media. I mean, the other side of it, of course, is Bridget Phillipson has written to every school saying make sure students never use phones. I think I've seen that as well. So, which I mean, isn't a new thing really. Most schools are phone free. I think there are more schools now taking phones in. I think I saw somewhere, the pouches. I don't know much about these pouches, but I saw somewhere that there was
Yeah.
no, for adults. It was an adult thing where they would where they would go into like a a music event, and they had to put their phones in these pouches, and they released automatically at a certain time, so they physically couldn't get their phone out until the pouch released, and I didn't know that thing. I didn't know that existed, but I don't know whether some schools are doing
I
that.
mean, do you know, yeah, we say about the kids, but adults are as bad. How many times have I been in concert? I mean, one where I was in, like classical music concert, and that people at the front phones rang. And I mean, how embarrassing, appalling for an adult to be in that situation.
Yeah.
Uh,
It's pretty shocking, isn't it?
Do you
Yeah.
know, I haven't had kids whose mobiles have rang in my lessons. So in a way, she's a lot worse than that. But, and it was hugely embarrassing. I mean, come on. Some adults have no more control than the kids we teach. That's
No.
for sure, so.
No, they really don't. You see people pushing their children in buggies with the phone. You see people in queues in traffic with their phone in their hand, even though I can't believe people still do that. But
I know.
I just literally, I can't believe why they're doing it and why they need to do it. But there you go. So like you say, it's that ingrained thing. I don't know. Sometimes parents might need more winning over than their children. I don't know. It's something that's going to rumble on. It'll be very interesting to see what the government do, because I mean, this government generally, whether you are on their side or not, they do seem to like really be trying not to annoy people, but managing to annoy people. So whatever they do is going to be wrong. That's for
Yeah,
sure.
of
We all
course.
know that already. Whatever they do will definitely be wrong.
We go
But
with it, though. That's the thing is, whatever, we moan about it, but we'd go with it because we have to anyway. So
yeah, we have to. Yeah, absolutely. We have to just run with it, just see what they do. But it will be interesting. I do think, yeah, all the sort of evidence does point to the ban being the way forward. But yeah, we'll see how that goes. We're coming into 50 sort of 4 minutes of the show. The only other thing that I had on, and we've only got like 5 minutes for it. We can obviously run over a little bit.
I think there was a comment there on the chat somewhere.
Yeah, we've had a couple of comments on the chat. I don't know whether they're ones that I want to read now because they're talking about
Slightly
particularly
off track on what we're talking,
yeah.
but that would be an interesting one to talk about.
I won't put it on the screen, but I'll just say that they're obviously quite focused on SEN and EHCPs. They'd like to speak about the current regulated qualification framework isn't designed or structured for learners with SEN or EHCP needs, has been the case for over a decade. The only way to fix this statutory gap is for legislation to be changed. Just wondering if you'd be willing to comment or discuss. So I might get in touch with that person. So thank you, Lauren, for those comments you've put in. Maybe I'll get in touch with you and we'll have a bit of a better chat about that. I wasn't ignoring you deliberately to be rude. Obviously, if there's a comment that we can really talk about, it's not something that I don't know if Yannick and I something that we can really get into at this point. But yeah, I'll thank you for that one, and I'll probably get back to you about that one. Yeah. So the other thing I had was I've got quite an interesting question to ask you, Yannick. What do you think of this argument over trads? If you're on Twitter, X, there seems to be, it's always been very factional. And we had a little bit of a chat off air, sort of Zoe, Yannick and myself. And we were sort of lamenting this fact that it is very factional. There is a lot of flag waving that goes on. If you criticize someone, what tends to happen is the people who generally agree with that person will then come out to defend that person.
Yes, of course. It's awful.
men.
That is
But,
awful.
but
That is
my
just.
point is, what do you? This has been something that's been sort of running on. Trads versus progs, right? People will
Yeah.
come on and say, "Oh, you're a trad. You shouldn't have him on. You shouldn't be platforming him. He's a trad. He's only cares about bossing kids around." And one of the comments, and I won't say who it's from because I've deliberately not mentioned any names in this show. I mean, I could because it's out in the public domain. But there was a comment put out there along the lines of relationships, right? And that's another word. If you say you've got to have good relationships in school, there's a meltdown. Everyone's like, "Oh, what's that? What are relationships? What does that mean? Does that mean you're just letting them get away with everything? You're being their mate. You're calling them, you right, mate?" And I don't think that's what it means necessarily. But the comment that I saw that really what I thought was interesting is the fact that this person was likening having good relationships to like having a cult. So it's not classroom management, it's leading a cult. If you are super focused on, what do you think that
Right.
person meant, Yannick?
Yes,
with that?
I'm reading it, and I'm not exactly sure actually what it means. To be honest, I'm not quite sure
No,
what
I'm not.
it actually means. Like, also, if people won't do what you say because of your good relationship with them, yeah, that's true. So there is something else for people to do what you want. It's not because of your good relationship. It's because of what? I'm not sure. It's because of your status, because of your routines, because you are leading. Is that what it means? And is he saying that if people are doing what you want because you have a good relationship, that it's basically a cult? I'm not quite sure what that even means, to be
Yeah.
honest. So I
No,
think
I'm not. I'm
it-
not. And I don't want to take that out of context because obviously a lot of people are going to take it out of context. But my point is you need, and I think most teachers know that you need a mixture of all of those things. If I go in just with rules and I'm like straight down the line and I'm mechanically going through my lesson, not really chatting to the students ever, not really asking them about their day and their weekend and their football team and all that, then I think I'd lose something of myself if I did it like that. So I think you obviously need a bit of both. Maybe there are people out there who think you can just be nice to young people and they will do what you want.
I mean, I think what it means is that you are not managing a classroom out of good relationship, which I agree.
Yeah,
Good relationship is not what makes you manage a classroom.
no.
Which
The
I totally
foundation has
agree.
to be. Sorry, Yannick.
Yeah. No.
Yeah, the foundation has to be. Yeah, the expectations are clear. There is some consequence to behaviour, and yeah, I don't know.
I mean, you could absolutely manage a classroom without good relationship, as in you come, you do your job, you teach students. Yeah, you can. I don't think the good relationship is the foundation of managing a classroom, which I tend to agree. But of course, that is, again, I find that very polarizing, because of course I'm not in this job not to have good relationship with the students. Of course, it would be a horrible job. And I'm obviously in this job because I like kids. So of course, I tend to be, I would say, yeah, I tend to be strict, have rules, but I hope so. I'm also good fun to be with in a classroom, because I'm fun. I like the relationship. Of course, I'm not only here to teach. I don't spend 60 minutes where there's no wasted time other than learning, because I find that also a little bit, or in my lesson, out of 60 minutes, and I'm proud of this, 59 minutes will be hard learning. Wow, okay. Wow, come
Yeah,
on.
I don't like that. I think I've been.
Yeah.
We bow down to you and your efficient use of learning time.
I'm the
Um,
best. I'm
yeah,
guru. Remember, guru. Yeah.
yeah, I agree with that. I've never really liked that teach to the bell and everything else and the do now and all that. And I understand why that does help, and we do obviously want to use the time wisely. We do want to not sell students short in terms of their opportunities.
Yes.
But yeah, they do. I find in students want just for you to I don't know, if you just show them a bit of kindness, a bit of attention from time to time. But then it depends on the context
More than
as
from
well.
time to time, Tony, don't you think?
Yeah,
Most
yeah.
of the time.
They want a bit of kindness, they just want a little bit, I don't know,
Yeah,
it makes a really big difference. Yeah, I saw, on, I can't remember which show, I watched a little clip of a show on here the other day. I don't know who it was, Finn, I don't know who it was who was running the show, doing the TTR show, but I just saw a little clip and they were saying that you should spend, in an ideal world, 2 minutes talking to a student, not about learning, just talking to them about, how was their weekend or something like that. And something so small, they're arguing, makes an enormous difference to them. So I think, yeah, you do need that. I think what the trap I've fell into in the past is being a bit, not sarcastic, but bantering them a bit. That kids don't want banter from their teacher. They get it. I think it's a problem,
yeah,
banter. It's a massive problem
yeah,
in my school
yes.
and I don't know whether it's because the students have the model, they're following a role model where we take the mickey, and it's an inherently British thing, maybe, that we, what, we, do you know what I'm saying? So, yeah,
Totally, yes.
and I don't know whether some parents maybe make the mistake of being like that, which is fine, with their mates and everything else. But I don't know, sometimes the kids pick up on that and then they start to do that and then they start to do it to the teacher. And some teachers fall into the trap of thinking that they should give it back. And I've found actually that really does not work. And sometimes they'll be giving it to you and you think, oh, I'm going to give some back. And actually, you really, my advice is definitely don't.
Yeah, and you see, that is not good relationship to me. That is not good relationship, because they need, you're in charge there, and you need to have that respect. And it's a hard balance, isn't it? It is difficult as
it
well.
is. It is really difficult because it's very easy to go one way or another. I'm really quite tough on a set I teach at the moment, a lower ability. I'm not allowed to say bottom set, a lower ability group, right? Lower retaining group. And I'm very tough on them, and I'm picking up on the little things and trying to stop them spiraling, and sometimes I do feel like I'm going a bit too far that way, but I think it's better to go more that way than towards the relationship. So I think what frustrates me about relationships is when people get annoyed when they hear it. I don't think anyone really is saying, I can run my classroom purely on good relationships. I don't think anyone who is an experienced teacher would think that that's something that you can do successfully.
No,
So
I agree. I would love to see that, and if that was the case, everybody would do it as well. We know what it's like to run a class of 30 people. It's 30 students in a classroom. If you don't do it, I don't think you've got any idea of what it's like. Even a nice class. I've got a year 9 French set. There's 32 kids. They are gorgeous. But still, you got to manage that. It's very easy for things to go, to fall apart. And 32 students, you've got to teach for, 2 hours a week. It's hard work. There's nothing harder than being in a classroom, and even nice classes. You've got to plan. You've got to run your activities. You've got to monitor, manage the change of activities. All that is it's hard work. Enjoyable, highly enjoyable when you've got a nice class. But God, you need the energy to do this, especially if you want to make it a little bit exciting. When you're going to do some stuff that's noisy, that's that's noisy, or stuff that is not noisy. So either way, you got to.
Yeah, and noisy doesn't necessarily mean they're not learning, they're not engaging.
Little things like, okay, we're going to do an activity, and then and then at the end of the activity, you've got a countdown like 3, 2, 1, right? And anybody who's not back in their seat within that time will get a consequence. But that seems harsh. But at the same time, if you don't do that, you'll have 10 kids not back in their seats. You'll waste another 30 seconds. It's all about, I think people don't see the aspect of managing why is it that when you go to a play, well, people have got to be in their seats at the time, and still actually, to come back to some people aren't, even they're paying adults. So imagine what that translates to in a class of 30 who have, some of them don't want to be here.
And
You've
I
got
think
to manage
there's
expectations.
And there are increased numbers of students, post-pandemic, who people are saying they can't do that, they can't cope with that. There's always been students who've really struggled in that environment, but it seems to be that there's more and more now really struggling. And yeah, it's difficult, that one. It's difficult. So it'd be interesting maybe to do a show in the future, just talking about this trad thing, because I'm interested in this idea that some teachers are seen as trads, progs and trads. And I don't think it really works like that. I think we all need an element of trad in terms of very clear rules and consequence, because otherwise I don't think anyone's ever going to get anywhere. So it's just a very unhelpful label that I find, pops up all the time. People are associated with it. Certain people, big names, I won't mention them now, but I'm sure you can think of some names who would be associated with the traditional
Of course,
consequence to bad behaviour, detention, internal seclusion, and so on.
People do the same in a way when you express an idea to put you in a box of you're Labour or you're Conservative, and in a way in America that was a lot more blurred, where you between the Democrats and the Republicans, where you can have some of the same ideas and you end up voting for the people sometimes rather than the political party. But yeah, you're absolutely right. Sometimes it's not helpful, and it's in a way it kind of quashes the discussion as well, because then you put you in a box and then game over. All right.
Yeah, then that person, and and that's been interesting, sort of rebuilding my account on X, because obviously I can be a little bit more selective now. It's interesting seeing accounts that I've either blocked or they've blocked me in the past.
Yes.
And yeah, it's interesting.
And it's great because you're right. There's nothing worse than being in your little echo chamber and only seeing the people that are in the same category as you, that think like you or that you agree with all the time. It's not healthy. But a lot of people do that, I think. But
I just saw that Tom put a couple more comments in, but I'd missed them off. He said, "We don't have time for that." I'm not sure what he meant when he said, "We don't have time for that." And I think a lot of teachers do that anyway. So I think, he's
right, though. He's right.
We'll just say he's right. It's something that will rumble on and on, isn't it? This argument. How strict should you be? What should your rules be? Should you have silent classroom? Should you have slant? Is that? Oh, was talking about the Facebook clip. He says.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. So, the 2 minute. Oh, that was it. Yeah. The one that I mentioned. Yeah, thanks, Tom. About the 2 minute, and he says the relationship building, which is an interesting one. Yeah, it'd be interesting to get some more thoughts on this relationship thing, this trad versus prog thing. So if anyone is out there listening, we'd really like some more people to come in, particularly if you're a classroom teacher, because we can get consultants in, we can get people who have written books in, and that's all very good. They've got some real proper knowledge that they can share. But what we're really interested in Teachers Talk Radio is people in the classroom, people at the chalk face. So if you're listening to this now, thank you to everyone who's been listening to us talk. I hope there's been something out there.
Yes, you
guys. Yeah, we need you. We need you to come on here and talk to us and talk shop with us. We're not too controversial. We're just giving we're always careful what we talk about. We're not, we might upset some people without really meaning to, but it's not deliberate. But if you want to come on and give your thoughts on some of these things, maybe you want to come on and start hosting one of these shows, then do get in touch. If you want to come on as a guest or a host in the future on Teachers Talk Radio, then get involved in that. Right. I think we should probably call it a night at that point, Yannick. I just want to say thanks for coming on again. It's nice to see you again.
Thank you.
I hope things are all good with you. And yeah, I'm sure we'll see you back on here again. I'll be back in 2 weeks, guys. If you'd like to be involved, do get in touch and yeah, come on and talk about something that you feel strongly about. Okay, so that's it for today, everyone. Again, thanks again to everyone who's tuned in. There's been a few people tune in. I really hope there was something there that resonated and that was useful to you guys. So from Yannick and myself and everyone at Teachers Talk Radio, have very restful and well-deserved pleasant evening, guys. See you next time. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
You've been listening to Teachers Talk Radio. Tune in live and listen back at ttradio.org. We look forward to hearing from you next time on Teachers Talk Radio.